The Attorney General out of New York State, this breaking news, she wants a judge to make it clear that Donald Trump, go to my iPad, Donald Trump overvalued his properties by up to $2.2 billion. Of course, he's a civil trial in New York in October, and she's saying point blank, they constantly lied about the assets, lied in trying to get loans and things of that nature. And oh boy, talk about going after his neck, Scott. Now, granted, this is civil, but this hits his ego because remember, everything is about I'm a rich man, I'm a billionaire, and she's like, nah, you're a fraud.
Yeah, and what she's going to do is she's going to use, this is what real estate developers do. They undervalue their property for assessment purposes and to save taxes. They overvalue it when they want to get loans against those properties. And so they're two inconsistent positions. And what Tish James, my law school classmate, is going to do, she's going to look at the tax information they submitted. She's going to look at the loan information that he got from several banks, right, to borrow against these properties and say they're completely inconsistent. One of them was a lie. The court's going to figure out, or the jury's going to figure out who's lying about what. But you can't have these two inconsistent pieces. Real estate developers do it all the time. That's how he's going to be found liable and have to pay back $2 billion or more. And it's going to be an easy case to try. A lot of documents, but in the end, you got a lie here on the left, a lie here on the right, somebody lying, and somebody's liable. And that's going to be the Trump Organization and Donald Trump, who was CEO and founder.
Rebecca, this is from the New York Times. Go to my iPad. Before any of those criminal trials will take place, Mr. Trump is scheduled for a civil trial in New York in October. During the trial, the Attorney General, Letitia James, will seek to bar him and three of his children from leading their family business, the Trump Organization, and to require him to pay a fine of around $250 million. She said the fraud was so pervasive, she said in the court filing, that Mr. Trump had falsely boosted his net worth by between $812 million and $2.2 billion each year over the course of a decade. Quote, based on the undisputed evidence, no trial is required for the court to determine that defendants presented grossly and materially inflated asset values.
You know, they need to go after him like they did those who did this type of puffery with getting PPP loans. Like, this still sounds like it's some level of security fraud. And like, I hear what Scott was saying, that yes, Tish James is doing this through through the civil side, but I'm really trying to understand, maybe Scott can enlighten us, why can't we go after him for security fraud? Because if we're able to prove that he did puffery up to $2.2 billion, which is very materially significant, that seems like there's a crime that was committed. Because the last time I checked, you cannot lie about income when you are applying for a loan. Like, that is a financial instrument, and then that's how we get into the realm of security fraud.
Mustafa, again, this is what the New York Times reporting on this filing, which was unsealed moments ago. Go to my iPad. In her new filing, she wrote that given the way that the worth of Trump Tower was calculated in 2018, it was overvalued by nearly $175 million. The following year, she said, the value of the building was falsely boosted by nearly $323 million. To Scott's point, Mustafa, this is what they said, quote, at the end of the day, this is a documents case. The filing unsealed on Wednesday said, adding that the documents left not a shred of doubt that Mr. Trump's annual financial statements, quote, do not even remotely reflect the estimated current value of his assets.
Those letters and numbers on those pieces of paper tell the truth. And they also highlight the lies that were told and the over-evaluations, and he will be held accountable. As Scott said, it's going to be hard to get around that one.
Well, and they also are claiming, the Trump people are saying that, well, a recent decision say that, well, a lot of this stuff happened too long ago and should not be a part of this whole decision here. But Scott, one of the things that I want people to understand, and a lot of people don't understand this, is that when you fill out that loan document. That's a federal document. And you misstate your income, you misstate your assets, guess what? You can go to jail. Now, a former Texas Attorney General, Democrat, guess what? He went to prison. And so this was somebody who many people talked about could be a future governor one day. But the reality is he filled out loan applications, misstated income. That's how they got his ass. He went to prison.
And that's how they get a lot of people. So on every loan document, mortgage application, bank document, because banks are federally regulated, right? And so at the end, there's the statement at the end of that application that you sign is that you swear on the penalty of perjury that the answers to these questions and the information contained herein is fully accurate and truthful. Sometimes it may qualify to the best of your knowledge, but very often these bank loan documents don't put that qualifier in there. And so you're swearing to it. If you lie, right, you can be criminally prosecuted at the federal level for false statements, loan fraud, mortgage fraud, making not just a false statement, but also conspiracy. If you do it on an ongoing basis, conspiracy to defraud, conspiracy to make false statements. And if you're inflated in up to $2.2 billion and they can show it, statute of limitations is 5 years, right? But if you add a conspiracy charge, that waives that 5 years. Someone, whether it's the feds or the state prosecutors, ought to be looking at that. They may have just passed on it because their discretion. But here again, you're right, Rebecca, a $2.2 billion overestimation over 10 years on several properties, right? That's organized crime. That's a purposeful effort, conspiracy to defraud banks. And you know, this is what he does. He overvalues, then he fails to pay the money back, and then he negotiates because the bank has too much exposure, and then they give him a deal, and he writes off the rest and hides it in his taxes and his accountants and what have you. So the criminal piece of this is real. So it may not be prosecuted, but it's real.
So folks, go to my iPad here. Again, the person I'm speaking of, former Texas Attorney General Dan Morales. This is from the Texas Tribune. It says right here, in one set of charges, Morales is accused of moving $400,000 from his campaign accounts to his personal accounts, then using the money to buy a $775,000 home. He's charged with lying on the application for a $600,000 mortgage loan and with signing a federal income tax return that year that said he and his wife earned less than $40,000 in joint taxable income. The point here is that, and these were criminal. Dan Morales went to prison, y'all. The reality is, this is a civil trial in New York. To Scott's point, they could go after him for criminal. They're choosing not to, but his actions are indeed criminal.